this belief that this is our government. Definitely, they will do whatever they can do for us to change our lives. But unfortunately, I think I was just naive.
I think corruption is taking place in these farms. Something is not right, Sisi. Something just not right.
All that we want is for the truth to come to the fore.
We need to move on with land reform and restore the dignity of our people.
A new dawn, an era of economic prosperity, restitution, security of food and tenure. But the rhetoric is contradicted by the reality. In 25 years, land reform has barely altered South Africa's agrarian terrain, often causing minor or negative impacts on rural lives.
I think what we've got to acknowledge now is that the problem with land reform is it's the state who's stealing people's land, and it's the state who is diverting the budget that was meant to be used for land reform to partners that provide kickbacks. And rural people are furious. They said time and again, you have betrayed us. You have turned us into non-entities with nothing.
Dr. Anika Klaassen heads the Land and Accountability Research Centre at UCT. Her diagnosis of land reform is stern.
Until the problems with land reform are identified for what they are, the elite enrichment, the diversion of resources, the incapacity of parts of government, people in government being on the take, I think unless those things are identified as the problem, they'll never be solved.
This is a pattern repeated across several provinces in South Africa, that companies and individuals who are politically connected are getting lucrative contracts from the state to take over land reform farms and farm them with state subsidies. In this sense, it's not land reform.
I am driving to a farm on the outskirts of Witbank, now called Emalasheni, in Mpumalanga, to visit a small-scale farmer called Benzi Masilela. The farm is called Veld Reardon, the Dutch word for well satisfied, but there is a poignant irony to this name because there is nothing satisfying about the state of this farm. Masilela's family had lived and worked there for generations. In 2007, the former Department of Land Affairs purchased several portions of it. This was done according to the proactive land acquisition strategy, whereby government buys farms and then leases them, supposedly to emerging farmers to make the farms productive.
I was born here in this farm 50 years ago. My parents were residing in this farm. My grandmom passed on and she was buried about 80 meters from here. My mom was also a farm worker here. She also passed on ages ago. She was also buried here. My brothers were also buried here. This farm belonged to Mr. Felix de Villiers, the deceased. A white man, what a man he was. Before he passed on, he sold this farm to the department. In total, the farm was it's 1,064 hectares. It is in two portions. The first portion is portion 4, which is where we are at now. And then the other portion I'll show you later, it's portion 6.
In 2007, government leased a portion of this farm to a company called Ikutseng Hadlamini. This is a shelf company whose 2 members include a Zimbabwean-born, highly successful investment banker by the name of Remnant Moyo. In addition to working for Nedbank, Mr. Moyo has been closely involved with Transnet and other parastatals. According to a Windeed search, the shelf company's operations include wholesale and retail goods, furniture and restaurants, nothing related to farming.
When the government bought this place, they said, we are going to be the tenants here, and but they never gave us anything in black and white.
Masilela claims that the lessee, Mr. Moyo, was provided with 4.7 million rand in government funding to upgrade the farm. He claims that the department pledged a further 1.5 million to the farm workers to repair the boundary fence, but this had never materialized. He says that a consulting firm called Nsika confirmed that the department had paid 4.7 million to the lessee.
The guys from Nsika did show it to us when they were here. The guy from Nsika did call his office in my presence, and they agreed that there's a certain amount that was allocated to this farm. They told me they will take it up with the department, and that's 3 years ago. Until now, nothing is happening. I even drove to their offices in Pretoria trying to make inquiries. And then they said that they will send me a document on my emails. Until today, they never did.
Responding through lawyers who say they represent the shelf company, Mr. Moyo denies receiving any government funding. We also contacted Nsika, a consulting company that has a contract with government to the tune of over 142 million rand in all 9 provinces. So what was their role on Veld Reardon? Nsika has not responded to our requests for comment. The lease agreement between government and Mr. Moyo's shelf company states that the lease will only come into effect in 2011.
Got in here in 2007, officially came in here, and they only managed to bear with him until he gets his South African ID in 2010. And then he signed his contract, his lease agreement in 2011.
Through the lawyers, Mr. Moyo has insisted that the lease commenced in 2008, was renewed in 2011, and since 2014 has been awaiting further renewal. The lease contract with the department also states that the lessee will be responsible for maintaining the farm, providing electricity and water, and will be liable for damages. The farm has been in a shambles.
The water, the electricity that we used to have, it was cut off.
Before she died, Masilela's mother had lodged a claim through the Extension of Security of Tenure Act with the Department of Rural Development for the portion of the farm on which her family had lived for generations to leave them a legacy.
My mom did register a claim about 2 decades ago, but that claim is also outstanding. It's not finalized, and nobody's telling me what to do.
How secure are you in terms of your tenureship here?
Not at all, ma'am. We're not secured because we don't have anything that says that this farm, we have a certain portion on this farm. So if somebody comes into this farm and say, look, this is my farm, I bought it, you go out, we'll have no choice, but we'll have to pack our stuff and go.
Over the years, Mr. Masilela's desperate letters to the Department of Rural Development have largely been ignored. The department has also ignored our repeated requests for interviews.
We do not just speak. We let every voice in our nation find full expression in language and in culture. We do not just teach. We empower all people with education. We do not just bring you the news. We place you where the news is happening. We do not just entertain. We take you on journeys. We do not just broadcast sport. We create an arena for sporting heroes to inspire you. Ours is not just a job, it's a calling to ensure that everyone in our nation is informed, educated, and entertained. We're able to do this because you do your part. SABC TV licenses. It's all made possible by you.
Solani Mkiva says that they believe that the king should be released and that they are not being opportunistic.
The last 4 years we have been engaging with government. It cannot be a post-colonial government that begins to jail a king. in a context of what actually happened.
Bobby Solomons, he's the spokesperson of the Alex Shutdown Committee, the multi-billion rand Alexander Renewal Project. Nothing came of that.
Community wants to know what really happened to the monies.
The creative director of the label, Mansu. That, of course, means black is beautiful in Sesotho. What has been your experience in that regard, given, some of the more established labels that you have managed to work with?
It is hard. 15 years is a long time. There's a lot of sacrifice for your family to make for you.
This is the thing.
Wearing without the brief.
This is it this morning.
We've seen that Brent crude oil rise about 30% this year alone.
Brent crude that's going steadily firmer speaks to a global economy that's in good shape. What we don't want to see are supply interruptions or sudden spikes.
The Bank of Athens has become Grow Bank. It plans to be a bank using digital and personable relations with its customers in the agricultural and food value chain space.
We're a lucky bank in that we are small. We're already working with artificial intelligence that allow us to manage our customer data.
Agriculture is a business. If we're going to take people, millions of them out of poverty, we've got to turn agriculture into a mega sector that works for everybody.
Living conditions of farm dwellers in Mpumalanga remain very poor. That's the finding of...
In 2016, the former Premier of Mpumalanga and now ANC Deputy President David Mabuza initiated a commission of inquiry into the shocking conditions of farm dwellers in Mpumalanga. Masilela claims that after the inquiry, promises made to him by the Department of Rural Development were never kept.
They gave us 64 hectares, which is around portion 6. And then again, they gave us 9.5 hectares, which is across the road.
Who did they give this to? You and who else?
Verbally, they gave it to us and the community at the farm. The problem with the verbal part of it that the department is giving to us, the potential investors, they do come here, they want the document that says we also have this part of this land here, but we don't have that document.
And it seems that government plans for Veld Reardon do not include farming. In 2004, Australian mining giant BHP Billiton, and later in 2015 its offshoot South 32 secured mining rights to both portions of the farm.
I deserve to know as to what is happening on this farm, and they are hiding almost everything. They are misleading, they are confusing us.
We've ground to a halt with the land reform program. It's just not working on the current model. Most people in South Africa want access to land, but they want access to very small parcels of land, mostly just to have a safe space to live and to do a little bit of pretty much subsistence farming or very small scale production. We have a state that is talking a pro-poor rhetoric, but in practice distrusts poor people from accessing land.
But rural communities are fighting back. Nothing for us, about us, without us. That is the slogan of the Guatyu Communal Property Association, representing 2,000 farm dwellers on 88 farms that were once part of the former Transkei government. In June 2018, Special Assignment broadcast the tragic struggle of Guatyu. It once belonged to a powerful clan of the Abatembu called the Amachachu. They were decimated in the 1800s by the British colonialists, and their land was confiscated. After the former homelands were incorporated into South Africa as state land, the lands became blurred as to whom the land belonged to, the traditional leaders who had lodged a land claim for Guatyu, or the farm dwellers who had lived and worked on Guatyu for generations.
We want this land to be transferred to the community of Guatyu so that we can also become the farmers that used to use this land.
But that has not happened, and both the traditional leadership and the community agree that the promised land has become a land of empty promises, a wasteland.
As there were farmers here, white farmers, there was fencing, there were boreholes, there were tipping tanks, there was plowing land. When the ANC came into power in 1994, we had greater hopes. Unfortunately, things didn't go well according to our wishes.
There's nothing. There's nothing at all. There was no maintenance, of the infrastructure that was there. The fences, the dams that were used by the farmers, the roads, the telephone lines, that is all gone.
Amabhulu akasekho kwangena urhulumente kaMatanzima still zange kubekho nto iphathekayo nangoku wedemocracy urhulumente simvotelayo akakasenzeli into sisasokola egwatyu sisokola nabantwana asityi nazi indawo sifuna usetyenziswa kodwa kunzima.
It is the government of South Africa that is owning this land, and it is that government that is denying these people this land so as to enable them to live off this land.
In 2017, I had visited Gwatyu, where most of the farm dwellers are elderly or unemployed. I was accompanied by Tembakazi Macheke, her 87-year-old father, and Obi Mabena. A former MK commander and businessman, Mabena had been assisting the Gwatyu Communal Property Association, but his involvement had enraged some of the Amachachu descendants.
There's been some people there who don't belong there, who have been instigating people to cause chaos. There's a chap called Mabena, who we don't know where he comes from, who has been a leader. And I can tell you, we can demonstrate to you that that chap has got no history in that area.
Paralysis on Gwatyu has threatened the future security of the Communal Property Association.
It's tragic to see what's happened, that not any of the recommendations by us or others have been acted on.
Rosalie Kingwell is a land consultant who conducted a land audit in Gwatyu in 1990 when it was a land reform pilot project. Its findings were never implemented.
Just want to point out that this is not only Gwatyu. All the other pockets of state land where I worked, and I worked in many, not one of those got acted on. And that points to gross ineptitude.
But is it only ineptitude, or does it point to a more sinister agenda?
Every year there are disbursements by Parliament for rural development. I think that is where the problem of some people, such as the people of Gwatyu, with access to land lies, because this is a nice milking cow. That's my summation. Because if you see the infrastructure, the way it's collapsed, where did the money for the so-called rural development go?
In 2015, the Gwatyu CPA requested the department to conduct another land audit to determine who the land would be transferred to. Initially, the department delayed sending its results despite several attempts by the Grahamstown-based Legal Resources Centre to access it via the Promotion of Access to Information Act. Special Assignment exposed this alleged duplicity and demanded answers from the department. When will the results of that 2015 land audit be made public?
What I can tell you, in this financial year, we would be able to do that soonest.
A year later, there is no resolution, and the Gwatyu community remains in limbo.
It's the last step before we go to court.
Reporter Sipho Stearman. Sipho, thank you very much indeed. What are they protesting about?
Well, they're talking about their living conditions, that they don't have clean drinking water, they don't have proper toilets, they don't have proper housing.
Lopang, tell us what's happening where you are.
Early this morning, one classroom was set alight at the school. Reptiles is creeping into the classrooms like snakes.
Residents are saying that they've been failed by the Mpumalanga municipality.
This is what you see. People are angry. Let the municipal manager go.
Africa's opposition parties have weighed in on the crisis faced by the Gwachu community. In 2016, it was the EFF in the National Assembly raising the red flag.
The people of Gwachu in the Eastern Cape, around Queenstown, whose tenure to land is insecure, and who have failed to get any support from your grandiose programs, from your government, due to nepotism and favoritism.
Since 2018, the Democratic Alliance has thrown its weight behind the rights of the community to land ownership.
If we don't get a response from this government, like we did in Limpopo, we will litigate against this government because we believe in the rights of citizens to be able to own land.
The community simply wants to be recognized, to farm productively, and to have security of tenure. Do you think that in your dad's lifetime you're going to be able to
get this land transferred to us? In fact, that is my wish. I wouldn't want her to leave this earth before this land is transferred to us. Not only for himself, but even other elderly community members to see this day while they're still alive. All the suffering of the people of Gwachu, I know, and it is my suffering too, and my family too.
Thank God we've got the Constitution, and thank God we've got the courts, because clearly our politicians really don't prioritize rural people being dispossessed by their own government.
But the explosive mix of frustrated landless communities and increasingly volatile demands for land adds fuel to the fire. The ANC is now committed to amending the constitution and expropriating land without compensation. Yet, given the shocking corruption on so many state-owned farms, farms that theoretically should already belong to the people, how can government justify this policy? Well, that depends on whom you ask.
The state must own the land, all of it, not a mixed land ownership. The state must own the land, all of it.
You've got 40,000 hectares here that are lying fallow. What are you going to do with those farms that you want to expropriate without compensation? Those farms that you're talking about are being used productively. They are contributing to our food security.
I see the expropriation without compensation as a way to deflect attention from the ineptitude of the department. Section 25 of the Constitution, the Property Clause, is very extensive. It already gives a lot of meat to land reform and land redistribution, and it hasn't been used to its full potential. So I do think that the expropriation debate is a bit of a smokescreen for the complexities on the ground.
And the business of corruption has successfully destroyed a farm in the Western Cape's Hex River Valley, a farm that should have been a beacon of achievement in land reform, but instead has become an emblem of its failures.
Farming is not about color and all sorts of things and politics. A farmer has to go and deal with his land, his or her land. And that's what we are all about here, to farm and build trust among ourselves and the farm workers in the valley.
In 2016, a forensic report was conducted into alleged corruption on this farm, perpetrated by officials in the Department of Rural Development in cahoots with an unethical multinational called SAFE that manages farms countrywide and its BEE partner, Bono. The report found that severe violations of the Public Finances Act had been committed. It recommended that criminal investigations be conducted and that millions owed to Novanda by the multinational be repaid, and that the Special Investigation Unit investigate other farms that SAFE and Bono had allegedly mismanaged and defrauded.
The farm was left without any management systems, and it dumped us all into a cesspool of hunger, frustration, and divisions caused by by Bono and Safe, and to an extent the officials that sits in the highest office of the department.
But it is the Novanda legitimate beneficiaries, a cooperative called the Big Five, who have been punished. 6 years after they were appointed as lessees, they still do not have a lease, and the Department of Rural Development is attempting to evict them. There is no grape harvest this year, and production on this once flourishing farm has been paralyzed. Like Benzi Masilela, the small-scale farmer who has no security of tenure, the community of Gwachu, who will have to resort to court action to secure their future, and countless others, the Big Five have become collateral damage in the alleged elite capture of land reform.
The government, especially the department, is not serious about this whole thing of land and giving people the opportunity to utilize the land. It is only about themselves, how they see things, and what they want to use the land for, and not for the very people that are struggling on a daily basis.
Since we began these exposés 4 years ago, the Department of Rural Development has consistently ignored our requests for interviews. We have contacted the presidency, but our emails have not been acknowledged. Unless this alleged corruption in land reform is cleaned up, the sun could set early on the so-called new dawn of our democracy.